Welcome to Humans of Reliability. My name is Sylvain, head of the Rootly AI Labs and your host for today. In this episode, we welcome Dileshni Jayasingha, VP of Technology at commonsku, a workflow collaboration platform for the promotional product industry. Let's dive in. Dileshni, thank you for being on the podcast. So you just recently started a job. Can you tell us a little bit about what you are doing and what you found in terms of incident management?
Thank you for having me. So I started at commonsku about 8 months ago. commonsku is a order and workflow management platform in the promo products industry. This is a new area for me. I came from the incident management world before, so it's a bit of a shift. This commonsku has been around for almost close to 14 years. They are a successful company, a profitable company, and they didn't have a formal incident management in place. They've had really good uptime, managed to stick to 3 nines of availabilities, but they didn't really plan for the worst case of where you would need a formal incident management process written down. So that's one of the things I've been working on since I joined here.
Did they have process? Did they have tools? How did they work?
So they had, the standard observability and monitoring tools, but for actually capturing an incident and paging people, and then for your root cause analysis, it was all manual. So they would, if there was an issue, someone would get a phone call, or they would try to get a hold of some of the senior engineers through phone calls. So as you can imagine, something like Rootly does it for you. You don't need all of this manual process.
Yeah, and I think nothing to be, really laughing about or ashamed about. I think a lot of companies are not doing incident management right. I feel most of companies are actually not doing it right. You'd be surprised. When you are in the space, you're like, what? I'm not doing that. But the reality is it's not something that really is spread it yet. It's becoming better. After all, PagerDuty will really democratize that all over company, right? They've been around for now over a decade, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not so long. So what was the first thing, what did you decided to do when you saw that, to really get, your company up to speed on incident management?
Yeah, it was the first time I did take was to kind of share my insight into we do need to have a formal incident management process to prepare for the worst case, and we're a very customer centric company. So that communication to our customers when an incident is happening is really important as well. So they're not left wondering if something's going on. So one of the first things we did was get observability tooling that is accessible to everyone. So prior to that, we had the tools that were accessible to just the engineering team. What I wanted to do was give anyone within the company access to it. So if a customer says something that they can raise the concern, they could quickly check these tools as well. And then we provided education on how to use it for the engineers, for the customer success team, and then anyone that was interested in learning, basically. And then we evaluated tools, and we brought Rootly in as our incident management platform. So we did a rollout of triggering, an incident through our observability tools and manual triggers. Then we set up an internal status page first, just to get into the practice of how to use a status page, how to provide updates. And then we rolled out an external status page as of last week.
Very good. Actually, when we first connected, the external status page was not yet a thing. I know you were working on it. Actually, that was something that was interesting. Why did you decide to go first with an internal status page? You would think, perhaps you want to put the priority on communicating externally, especially given your focus on customer success. So what was the reasoning behind this progressive rollout?
One of the things was that I really wanted our teams, not just engineering, but customer success as well, to build that muscle of how we communicate, the cadence in which we communicate. So using that in our internal status pages and using templates before we went to doing that in the public status page. And another thing for me personally, coming from PagerDuty, our status updates are very technical because our users were very technical. I'm in a completely different industry with the promo product space, and the type of message that you put out is very different, which I've learned because my CEO, Catherine, when I was doing the first status page update, she was like, this is very technical. So we might need to massage the messaging before, we send it out to customers in the future. So this was also a muscle for me to build as well. And then the internal stakeholders needed to understand what it meant for them. And then they could give us the perspective of, okay, I can understand what you mean by these status updates, or I need to alter something, or we need a different cadence in which we update, and then giving everyone the education around what we publish internally versus what we publish publicly. But I think we've got that within like a month. We were able to sort that out.
Another thing I want to react to this. One of the things you said is your CEO giving you feedback on perhaps the update, the vocabulary and the tone of the update may not match customer maybe not expectation but level of understanding. I want to give a shout out to Sebastian Dietz, who is a fellow reliability leader and practitioner. And he was sharing with me that he has a similar kind of conclusion where he thinks that, the postmortem that we are used to consuming and writing are, as you said, very technical. But sometimes for a broader audience, they simply don't work. And working on a way to making them more accessible could be something that, the industry should consider. So it looks like you guys are going to dig into this. Did you take any concrete steps yet, or is that something you are going to work on in the future?
So what we did in the first time that we had a pretty significant incident was, so we went through, a public status page, but we provided communication to be like our customer success team provided the communication to customers, but we obviously did our RCA and then did like a post-incident summary to our customers. So that's when Catherine provided the feedback. It's like, this is very technical and like it needs to have a brand voice, right? So that's when me and my senior manager, John, we worked together on iterating it multiple times to get to the level of detail where we felt like we were giving our customers the insight needed on what happened, what we're going to do in the future so that we prevent similar incidents and so that they have the trust in us that, we're focusing on the customer experience and we're going to try to make this better for the next time. So we have like a good baseline now of what it should look like for the future. So at least we have this template of this is what we did for that first incident. We can follow that for the next time. And we use ChatGPT to help us
I was about to ask you. Yeah. No, I think, obviously the reliability community is very skeptical of, AI and LLM. There is a lot of hype and, using non-predictable system is always something scary. But for this type of task, I think it's
perfect.
Right. It's perfect, right? I think it's very hard for engineers to kind of step outside of their scope of work and even understand what could be the level of detail or tone that people in other spheres know, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think LLMs are great.
And it's also, sorry.
No, go for it. I was done.
I think another thing that we did that we'll use as a practice is you can use ChatGPT to say the different personas that you'll have, right? We'll have the customers that are more technical that will want that in-depth level of, yes, it's like a CPU related issue. We can increase the CPU, what happened? What are we going to do next time that it's more automated? So they want to know that detail, whereas the not so technical clients want the high level. So being able to have those personas identified and you can save it as a project in ChatGPT, right? That you can use in the future is also a really good practice.
Kayla, our product leader, showed me a few weeks ago. We are building something like this in Rootly where you will be able, and I hope it's fine that I speak about it. I hope I'm not, it's not a spoiler, but all the postmortem for our user are going to be templated. And this template will, sometimes contain very objective information, bullet point of stuff. And sometimes also we'll use generative AI. And, you can customize obviously the prompt. So I think to your point, as you said, you could tell your, come up with multiple workflows that generate multiple postmortem incident report and adjust the tone of voice based on what you want. Another thing, actually, I want to bounce off what you said is, again, this idea of developing a muscle. That's, I'm quoting you here, which, a few days ago, there were a trend, I think it was on Hacker News, reacting to, was it the AWS or some Reddit outage? I forgot. But the question from the user was, hey, why are these status page not updated real time? You know, right? Like you would think that, that should be this way. I have my opinion on this thing, but I'd like to hear from you. Like, yeah, what do you think about automating that? Like, what are the pros and cons, and why do you think most companies are not automating them?
I think for a company that's early on in the process of having a formal incident management process, I think it's not, we should start with like the manual updates, because you can kind of tweak, like, okay, are we at a good enough spot to provide an update? Like, do we have, a lot of the updates are not just like, this is what we're doing, right? This is what we're doing, and when will the next update be? And what's the next step that we're trying? So it's more like getting in that habit, like, and then the engineers understanding, or whoever is updating the status page understands, like, this is the information we need before we can post publicly. Ideal state would be to have it automated, but I'll be honest, I'm starting there right off the bat would make me very nervous.
I think it's tricky, as you said, like it's an incident are ever evolving, right? And you may not know yourself yet, right? The kind of like the real scope or impact, all right? So sometimes it's hard. Very good. I want to also jump back on something you shared, getting into, like you said, you put in place like basic monitoring, and you shared this with a large group of people. Can you share what tool you put in place briefly, and more specifically, which group of folks did you share it with outside of engineers, and also what was the intent behind this?
So we use Datadog, rolled out Datadog. We were using a different tool before, and it was pretty quick for us to get onboarded. The engineers were the first group of folks that we trained on how to use it, but the next group that I focused on was the customer success team, because they're our front line talking to our customers. The reason why I did that, and a lot of other tools that I provided for them, is to give them autonomy to be able to solve a lot of escalations that come to them, rather than engineering becoming a bottleneck. And I think it's important too, right? Like this day and age, we have all of these tools available. We have AI-powered tools that are available that's like kind of democratizing access to non-devs. And we should use that to our advantage across the company. So that was one of the reasons why we started with training the CS team. And I think they've really enjoyed it, because now when a customer comes in, I have an example of a customer in Australia that had emailed and said, hey, like we had an issue logging into your platform at like X time in Australia. Traditionally would come to engineering to look at, and it's yet another interruption for my team. But this customer support person was able to look in Datadog logs, drill down to that customer subdomain, figure out the actions they were able to do and the actions that they were not able to do, and then communicate that back to the customer before they even had to get engineering involved, which I think is a win for everybody. It was really encouraging to see that from my perspective too.
I love it. Very, as you say, empowering. Actually, I'd be curious, like, how did the customer support folks react when you came with this? Did you face some backslash, or was it all excitement? Like, how was it received?
I mean, they've been very excited, and they've ramped up really fast on these tools. So we also provided them read access to our read replica, our database as well. And I showed them how to use Claude to help build queries that they can run some of our customers will send us requests for custom reports that they want, or they just want like, what happened to these emails that was supposed to be sent out for this shop? Or can you show me all of the orders that were made for this specific time period for this specific sales rep, which we don't have in the product right now. So the customer support folks were able to do this themselves, and they've really like embraced the challenge, and they have been running so fast. It's almost like framing as upskilling versus like it's important in the current job market as well, right? To provide the ability for people to upskill. So it's been really positive so far.
You are really empower them to get to the next level in their career, right? Like we've been speaking about how LLMs are empowering developers to, be more efficient. But here you are really democratizing access to software engineering to a group of people who probably very limited access to in the past.
Yeah, and It doesn't also have to stop at customer success either. We actually gave the same tool to our chief partnership officer and showed him how to run queries when he needs to figure out performance of our suppliers before he has meetings with them. I think it's exciting for them as well to be able to get this information without having to wait on engineering. Another thing I should mention is one of the other motivating factors for me was one of my teams had very high unplanned work. So escalations coming through, I think at one point they were at close to 50% unplanned work. And so that's another push for me to be like, give people more tools to help solve the issues. So only like the actual bugs or other issues that gets escalated to engineering.
The interruption is a serious matter for operation team, right? Like because of like lack of efficiency and ever burnout. I think when people are not able to fulfill their duty because of interruption. I'm curious, I think this is like such a interesting topic, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would, love to follow your lead on this initiative. How did you go about rolling out this to customer support folks? Like, did you train or provide resources? Can you walk us through your process?
Sure. So for Datadog specifically, what we did was a hands-on workshop. We kind of walked through the main things that you should care about if a customer is saying there's an issue, or if you are, using the platform and someone's like, oh, it might be slow. You look at the request serve volume, the latency graphs, error rates. So that was like simple things to look at. And I gave them time, like a week, to get comfortable with it. And then the next session we had was, why don't we take one of the customer support tickets that were open for you, and let's see if we can leverage Datadog to help answer these questions. That's the same method that we followed for when we gave database access so that people can run queries. We did the same thing. We got a bunch of tickets and we would say, okay, let's test out how we write a query and then run it and see if it gives you the answer back. Tying it directly to their work is probably what helped the most, rather than just doing a general overview session. And then I also did provide them resources for, especially MySQL, to learn how to write sample queries, online videos that they could watch, Coursera courses, or if they wanted to do self-guided learning, just reading. So provided multiple options so that they could pick which one worked the best for them. But yeah, it's been more of a partnership with the engineering and CS to help them get ramped up.
And just curious, what does your engineering team think of this initiative?
I think they've all been excited. They're like, hey, someone else can write the same queries as me. That's great. I won't get interrupted to running these queries. They've been super helpful. One of the engineers, folks have been also putting down commonly used queries, because we know trends that come up, trend of a customer asking if this order was paid correctly or something like that. So that's been super helpful. I think they've all, surprisingly, everyone's been positive about all of this and embracing this new change and new way of working.
That's really cool. What are the next steps in your strategy? I'm sure you have more plans where you want to push this further.
So I wanted to, this is a shout out to Ryan Fox, who's the CTO of super.com. He was the one who really gave me the vision for the end state of this. So what I would love to do is get to a point where non-devs feel comfortable and confident putting up PRs for small changes that we have. They can understand the code base. Every dev team has a backlog of issues. And there's issues like small UI changes that we may never get to, or if it does, it will be 4 months from now, right? So what if I enable or empower people to be able to make those changes? Obviously, we'll still get reviewed by someone on the Eng team, but I think that would be an amazing end state for this. And so that's what we're slowly working towards.
I love it. I was at SRECon in Europe a few weeks ago, and I gave a talk on the impact of coding assistant for SREs. And obviously there is a lot of skepticism around this system and kind of, should you trust this, people to work with this thing and so on and so forth. And the answer is obviously no, you should not. As you should not trust humans, we've been cultivating for maybe 2 decades now, the idea of, blameless culture, right? If someone and it's often the case, like if a human, a coworker, breaks production because of a change, the blame is not put on the person, but on the system not having the right guardrail in place, right? So I think in many ways here you have the similar philosophy, right? Where you are empowering people who are like very junior at this, right? But, provide them tools that can get them to a place where they might contribute in some shape or form to the code base. And then you have like the right guardrail in place to make sure that, right, this fix is correct. Like what's your take on this?
Yeah, totally. I like 100% agree. Like it's the guardrails that are really important, and us evolving those guardrails with LLMs being part of how engineers and non-engineers code and understand the code base. So like having good test coverage, having, the one thing I've been emphasizing with my team is like make small changes to production. No big bang changes, right? That's one of the big things I've done since I've joined commonsku is we continuously ship small changes, and then it's faster to roll back. So having the mechanism to be able to roll back quickly, if we find an issue, having automated test coverage that will catch issues for you is really important. At the end of the day, we do need a human to review the code before it goes to production. I don't think that's going to go away for probably never. Definitely agree on the guardrails piece.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I think a lot of companies are facing is that this coding assistant can output a lot of codes, and you come up with like huge pull requests. And then it's also a pain to review for the code reviewers. And then even though you may gain productivity on writing code, then your bottleneck becomes the code reviews, right? So exactly, yeah. I think making sure that code reviews are going smoothly is already, and it's going to be an increasingly more important.
And if you have a massive PR, if you can't explain it, you probably shouldn't be asking your teammate to review it, right?
Dileshni, if people want to get in touch with you on the internet and ask you questions or just chit and chat, like where can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, mostly just on LinkedIn. Or you can type in dileshni.com and it should route you to my LinkedIn profile. So you can always get in touch with me there.
Thank you for sharing your story and for coming on the podcast.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.